Good morning and welcome to Market Review as we continue our conversations around the economy and the markets. Today we'll be looking at governance, institutions, and the impact on the economy amidst this COVID-19 pandemic. With me to lead this discussion is Mr. Soji Apampa, Co-Founder, Convention on Business Integrity. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And nice to have you. And with me in the studio to join this conversation and take it to the next level is Mr. Bosun Mofaye, CEO, Frontier Africa Reports.
Nice to have you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, nice to see you. Nice to have you.
And good morning, Mr. Apampa.
Good morning, sir.
It's good to see you, sir.
Yes. So, Mr. Apampa, how's the experience been? We've now gone through 2 lockdown phases. What has been the experience for you?
Personally, I've been through 3 lockdown phases. The first one is from having returned or having returnees in my house from outside the country.
Okay.
For the self-imposed lockdown before the 2 official lockdowns. So we're grateful that we're alive and we're trying to thrive despite the situation.
Okay. Yeah, that's very important, being alive and thriving through the situation. So let's look at the COVID-19 and the quest for transparency in governance, because across the world, including Nigeria, times like this requires transparency in governance, whether it has to do with managing the issue of palliatives, whether it has to do with cutting down wastages, whether it has to do with giving leadership amidst the pandemic crisis. What is your assessment in Nigeria from federal to subnational?
Well, let's start with trying to get a common definition of what transparency means. And then it will be easier for us to benchmark whether we are getting transparency. Transparency, of course, is a subset of accountability, but specifically, it means that there is appropriate self-disclosure going on by the authorities, and that self-disclosure also lends itself to appropriate scrutiny from outside. It is when you have the products of the two matching where what is being disclosed is matching what you find when you scrutinize, that you say that there is transparency. So can we really be talking about transparency right now? First, we have to look at the quality of disclosures and the amount, not just the volume of information, but the usefulness, the relevance of what we're being given. So yes, we're told figures of those who have been infected and those who have recovered, sadly those who have died, and so on. But that's not the only thing that defines what is going on at the moment. Receiving timely updates, and we're not really being shown what those monies have been applied to, how much has been spent, what it has been spent on, and so on and so forth. So for you to talk about transparency, you need to look a little more holistically at the whole thing, because there's a task that has been accepted to be done. It's all the elements of the task. Not just the frightening one, which we're looking at most of us. So I think the quality of disclosure can be improved, but to enable something on the other side in order to establish the quality of transparency that there is.
Yes, and transparency. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Soji? Okay, all right.
In terms of the management of the...
What I'm saying, sir.
Okay. In terms of the management of the lockdown, now we hear that it will be eased from the 4th of May, that's Monday, in Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun State. And we've also heard that a total lockdown has been announced in Kano State for the next 2 weeks. We're also hearing the issues of curfews that will be placed from 8 to 6 p.m. when the new measures take effect. How would you assess this in terms of ensuring that there's a clear balance between the health and economy is in place for the country?
I think you have taken the key, which is balance. Because I think the fear continues that we have not tested enough people, and therefore there's a very good chance that when we go about our legitimate duties, we are bound to come in contact with persons who are positive with COVID-19. Yes, the emphasis, which is some filter that covers both the nose and the mouth, becomes crucial for getting back to work, that we don't forget to wash our hands, we don't forget the sanitizer, that we keep that culture going is really important. But it is a frightening prospect because so many people in Nigeria still do not believe that there is anything like COVID-19. They think they hear stories of people dying, they just shrug. So amidst that, we really need to be extra careful. But if we do not open up, it will be impossible for the farming season to start because the rains have already started. By now, clearing should be rounding up. People should be getting ready to plant in May. That's the normal timetable. So it is very important that we find that balance, and we're grateful that the government is doing so, but we have to approach it with serious care.
So, Mr. Boston, the balance between the health and economy is very important.
Yes, it is.
And also approach it with very serious care.
I agree.
What are your thoughts from when you saw the key highlights?
That was good. And to take it on from what Mr. Apampa said, we need to get the economy reopened in an orderly fashion and in a manner that allows the huge informal economy get back to business. And that's the backbone of the Nigerian economy, whether you like it or not. Now with oil at the bottom of the barrel, the government will now have to lean heavily on agriculture and other informal economy where you have jobs can be preserved, folks can do trade, okay, and they can engage in other form of commerce and merchandising. Yeah. But as been said, this is the time now to drill down on communication, what we call effective communication to the varialization is very important. In other words, whether you own a store or you own a barbing salon or a hairdressing salon, you need to ensure that folks coming into your salon have their hands washed in your presence at every level. How we are going to educate the various trade groups to take this on remain to be seen. And I think, for example, if you take the Union of Road Transport Workers, for example, those that run buses and critical groups and run taxis and what have you, how do we educate them at their bus parks or motor parks that before you enter bus in Ojota, for example, whatever, you wash your hands and the conductor is waiting by the door to apply some sanitizers and be sure that everyone sitting in the bus are not overloaded and they have their face masks. We can do this and get the economy up and running because again, we haven't done enough tests and we can't really be sure who needs to be tested. So we need to, preventive measures now becomes the higher priority since we can't do the tests and we don't have enough equipment to even do the tests, as it were. And then you have cases of places like Kano coming up very strongly in which we now need to move resources, both manpower and cash and other things to support them as well, and so that we can begin to get back to business. But based on what I've heard so far, I think the government have taken a very good decision by Mr. President, taking the lead yesterday evening, announcing that. I was happy that the insurance sector was mentioned for providing healthcare workers with cover, initial 5,000. We want to be sure how much they are getting paid. For example, in the UK, the families of the NHS and other health workers who lose their lives, it was announced £60,000 is what their family members will get What is the insurance cover for our healthcare workers? We need to know. So speaking to transparency and accountability that Mr. Apampa and Convention on Business Integrity have been working on doing excellently since 1995, I think that speaks to it. So it's not enough to just say they will be paid and so. Can they have certain figures? It brings comfort to the families of our health workers in Nigeria and other members who are still putting themselves out, or those who are skeptical, to say, look, even if I happen to get infected and perhaps I lose my life in the line of duty, my family will be entitled to XY amount of figure. That is comforting. So when I saw that on Sky News yesterday evening with the UK authority making the 60 families of this one, that is transparency. So it's not enough to say they will be compensated and insurance cover. How much is it really worth per person? And that is transparency, that is accountability. On one side, then the entire COVID account and other donations being made, not outside the COVID and the central bank, how are they being said? Where is the central accounting and reporting of all of this? We do not know, and it's be good if we know. Maybe we'll bring in the Financial Reporting Council or Office of the Accountant General. We just need to have a way, or maybe Soji Apampa's Convention on Business Integrity can help the government there.
So Mr. Soji, Mr. Bolson, just like Mr. Taoyedele, who we had earlier, 9 a.m., they've raised the need for coordination. Most of our guests in this program, both the economy and politics and the market review, have raised the need for coordination of policy and particularly coordination of these donations. So from the oil and gas sector, we have over 20 billion naira. From the central bank coalition, we've seen COVID, 25 billion naira. So how can we really achieve this coordination in a way that we can begin to channel the funds and, like you said, transparency begins to set in? Because initially, like COVID, they were looking at healthcare, but they're now looking at providing feeding to over 1 million households.
Okay.
I think, health emergency like this, we need to get a
coordination structure clear that it needs to have some kind of which is supported by adequate planning, supported by operations, supported by logistics, and finance and administration. You have to have those. So, and you also need to have your objectives very clear. It's not the time to be chopping and thinking. You need to coordinate also with the action on the ground. Are you coming in to strengthen the response on the health side, or are you coming in to strengthen the palliatives, or are you strengthening the economic stimulus? I think they have to decide, COVID needs to decide where it wants to pitch its tent. And if it's across all three, it needs to decide well. And it needs to allocate the funds and say, and the company will during the implementation of things. There's no rocket science to it. You just need to be disciplined in the approach to it. But if you look at Nigeria generally, we have not been disciplined in our approach to budgeting. We have not been disciplined in our approach to procurement, disciplined in our approach to implementation of operations, and so on. And we expect that to just flip at night because COVID has come. That is not going to happen. So we have to believe that the government takes extra care in the spending response for the money and the spending to be at a time like this.
Okay, I mean, I hear you very well, Mr. Soji Apampa, on that need for competent hands and the need to really, really drive down processes, which we've not been doing so well, and this has highlighted the challenges of governance and efficiency.
Maybe weekly, if I may cut in here, respectfully, maybe a weekly briefing from the central bank, or central bank assigned, because within the COVID program, there are committees. Yes. So I know there's a communication committee. And this communication committee, I think I have about 5 members or 7 members or so. Maybe someone within the communications committee or group of the COVID team can be designated to hold a weekly Zoom, whatever, briefing in which we have facts and figures. Okay. Now that distribution have started in different phases, for example, the funds that are going to small businesses and whatever, that is going on through NASAL and all of that. Then you have the distribution of food items and other products to the vulnerable. That is also good on the other hand. So I think that the communications unit of the CACOVID can do a weekly press Zoom in which radio, TV stations can join, journalists can join, and they can ask, and members of the public can also watch these. They can use digital platform, Twitter, other also to communicate. It is good. They communicated very well when they were taking off. Now that the distribution and the program is now hitting the ground and running, it is time to communicate even the more in terms of what we are doing. This is how much we have in the balance. This is how much we spent into A, B, C, and D. Yeah. We have deficiencies in such areas, these areas. We want it to be part of it. We need more help in these areas. Now, that brings comfort to everyone, including the contributors in the game. So I would suggest maybe from later, maybe it's going to be every Mondays or Tuesdays or Fridays at a specific time in which you have a Zoom link sent to every media houses. Then the media can follow, then it can be well reported that this is the weekly briefing by CACO because it is first of its kind in Nigeria. Yeah. I'm not sure it has ever happened before.
When private sector mobilizes such.
And you have government agencies involved. Yeah. Once you have this handshake between the public and private sector, yes, and monies are distributed, I don't want to hear any stories after the lockdown and the whole thing is over about whether money is missing, whatever is left somewhere there, or who did not get what. Let's do the weekly briefings now so that folks can take their pen and paper and start to do the tally by themselves every week. Yeah. I said, this is what to come. So if there's a balance left at the end of it all, we can decide where that goes. Because so the communications department, the communications unit of CACOVID should start doing weekly briefings. That's my take.
And this goes to subnationals too, because
private sector, in fact, at the state level, that should even be every state like Lagos, Ogun, Abuja, by now should be doing their own weekly donations, briefing as to expenditure and other things.
Yes. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Soji Apampa? Mr. Soji Apampa, can you hear me?
I agree. In fact, I think one of the things CACOVID should do is to provide professionals to the government, to help the government achieve this on their side as well. So not only that CACOVID should lead by example, I think this is where they can be donating some support to the government to strengthen communications, to strengthen accounting and transparency and so on. This is where the private sector has a lot of strength. And therefore, this is what I think they should also be donating at this time.
Okay, Mrs. Soji Apampa, let me go to something that's of huge interest to you and also to Mr. Boson. The Central Bank of Nigeria rolled out 50 billion naira to NISL for businesses to assess. Over 80,000 applications have come out, and we hope to hear from them the updates on how so far.
The progress,
yes, the progress. We expect to hear from them in that regard. But how has it been? I know you have interaction with several of the MSME groups in the country. Mrs. Soji Apampa, can you hear me? Okay. We'll try and get back to him. Okay, yes. Yeah.
I think there's no gain saying the fact that MSMEs. Yes, I can hear you. There's a big lag.
Okay. You can go on. Okay, so we're talking about the MSMEs.
So,
yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that very quickly, what the government really, I hope, has become clear to the government is that planning is impossible without data. We should have data about the poor. We should have data about businesses, small business. We have registration information on all of them. It would have been so much easier to know who is all the trillions and billions being spent by the central bank. They should reserve about 15 billion. I believe that with 15 billion in as short a time as 40 years, and give them national identity. That is required in terms of money, but I would like to suggest that you can bring it conceptually what has been done on the Anchor Borrowers Program, where one competent anchor is helping to distribute and support thousands of farmers. Why can't we have one competent professional firm supporting like 20 SMEs or 30, whatever they have the capacity to do, so there is some kind of incubation happening. We can't keep postponing the day saying MSMEs have no capacity, they don't have no capacity, without having a plan. This is the time to put a structure in place. Let's pre-qualify professionals and let us have the SMEs attached to them in an anchor program, and let the professionals themselves get some kind of bonus. The objective, but we can do something about it now. Now that the professionals are suffering the same way as the MSMEs are suffering. So putting that together will be good. And if you can link it to some of the big businesses, that these MSMEs are involved in value chains that then supply larger companies, which the professionals can help them achieve the standard, then it is a win-win-win all round, because it will help the larger companies also restart their supply chains and value chains, which are currently. So we have to think more strategically with how we're utilizing these public funds that we have available.
I think that's very profound. Again, if you look at what the government has done over time, and I'm trying to understand the angle from where Mr. Apampa is coming from, we have SMEDAN, which is the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Association of Nigeria. Agency. What exactly is SMEDAN doing? Now you have the BOI. The BOI, which is the Bank of Industry, will help you as an SME if you come and what have you, and they have various units and departments. But again, to incubate and do a midwifing of some SMEs across sectors. So if you're doing the one for in the healthcare sector, if I'm going to be the handmaiden for the one in agriculture sector, and within the agri sector, I'm taking just farmers, and you are taking the processors, and someone else is taking the guys in warehousing and storage, so that someone in agriculture don't do a jack of all trade. I have competence only the one in dealing with farmers, then I'm adding logistics and other things into it. No, Bosun, can you just stay on logistics or processors, and you take the SMEs within that space? If you're within agriculture, animal husbandry is one subset. Then you have fishery and other things. Then you have research and development. We can do this, but I'm just keep wondering all the time, what exactly was SMEDAN doing? Because when these SMEs approach the banks or approach even NASA, the problem sometimes is not just about the fund, but that the business is not viable, it's not bankable, or whatever problems.
Data is very important.
But there's no data
to provide those SMEs.
Exactly. So we keep winking in the dark all the time. Now, this pandemic has brought something also very important to the fore. When are we fixing our census and do a population and know exactly how many we are? We have some postulations as to how many SMEs we have in the country. We don't even know how many. That's the backbone of institutions and governance at the public and private sector. It's based on data. If you don't have data, then
can't reach out.
Then you can reach out effectively. There's always going to be a lot of questions, a mountain of questions after some good intentions pave the way to hell. So we need to keep avoiding this, that each time we set out with good intentions, but we all end up in all our programs normally almost always end up in hellfire. Sorry, just to, I'm not an advocate of hellfire, but it's just an analogy to say, look, we just end up in the wrong place, but we started with good intentions. So we want to distribute. COVID had good intention. The central bank has, the president has good intentions. Oh, like previous Shopee was a good intention. SIP's MAMSA was a good intention. Better life for rural women or D-Free. Run short of good intentions and programs on paper. But when it comes to we don't have data as to who gets what and who doesn't get, who is competent to do what and not to get what, we don't know. And if any institution under the SMEs, directly to your question, is lacking, in what areas and who can we approach to say, help this company, don't push the company away, but help this guy to meet the requirements to move on. Just the way you do in an Olympic race. You know, in the race, you just give them some water, some glucose to keep running. You don't say, well, this guy's getting sluggish. Can we just take him out of the race? You don't do that. That's why you find folks lining up the route, isn't it? And as they're going on the bicycle and cycling, they're giving them they're changing their tires, you know, giving them some support to make sure they will get to the end of the race. If you keep pulling out every company and say, sorry, we can't take your application, you throw it in the dustbin, you never get anyone to finish the race.
And they're the ones that help to drive activity.
And these are the ones at the heart of the entire economic backbone. Those are my thoughts. Sorry, Mr.
Also in touch with the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, and the activities. I know that they have a National Action Plan 5.0, which is still in the works, though for now some of the activities will be on hold until after the full lockdown is eased.
Start by saying that it has been improving. We have been turning the corner as a country of improvement, but there's still Kano, Enugu, other places to follow suit. And I think deepening the achievements of PAYBACK across the national levels is a very important way of ensuring that Nigeria continues to improve the environment. But another way is also setting standards. We need to set standards for MSMEs and help them achieve those standards. Because if we do so, it will become more enabling for themselves, because the environment is not only the external one, it's also the internal environment. If they're able to meet standards, they will be able to find more value chains in which they can plug themselves into. So it goes both ways for the SMEs. I know for internationals who want to do business here, enabling environments really matters, and also for the larger companies. But at this, when we're restarting our economy from this COVID problem, we really need to pay attention to the quality. Otherwise, if there's another shock from the inside, as a way of strengthening the business environment as well.
Now let's look at something that you raised earlier, which is also of interest to Mr. Bolson here, the Agrospace, the farmers, this period. It's very critical that the logistics, it's very critical that the access rate, particularly the issue of access, movement of goods and services, it was good that the Minister of Agriculture, Alhaji Sabo Nanono, met with his Minister of Police Affairs to look at how they can ease access for movement of products from the farm even to homes. Now, let's look at the situation for farmers. What are those challenges you're seeing at this period, and how can they be addressed amidst this pandemic and amidst the fact that we still have some measures of lockdown across the country?
Problem number one, we need to train farmers. You cannot aggregate people together again because of the pandemic. So everybody needs to change strategy now. And now you have to be more mobile, moving from community to community to train smaller numbers of people at the same time. So imagine you're trying to cultivate 600 hectares this season. You may be talking, and if you have one hectare per farmer, that's at least 600. So you still need to be able to travel from local government to local government, training the farmers without being outside the rules. Next thing, you need to bring your inputs to the warehouses. So imagine that you are going to work with farmers in Kaduna State, but your seeds are in Lagos. You have to move the seeds from Lagos to get to warehouses in Zaria at the end of the day. So there's going to be it's going to be very important to allow this through the interstate lockdowns that the government is still putting in place. Yes, we know that if you remove it blanket for everybody will claim to be a farmer. And people will all be in their cars driving around up and down, defeating the object. But we have a license to operate. Whether you as the truck driver have to be personal protective equipment, it has to be provided for you before you get a license to actually move anything interstate. That when you stop, you can stop to rest, but you can't mingle in the local because all those joints will be closed. You have to provide the food and everything for those who are traveling. There are some protocols that you can put in place to ensure that the farming season can actually start, but you need that interstate movement to happen. And accreditation of persons who will be allowed to make those interstate journeys. Okay. There are rumors that people are already making those journeys, but by paying bribes, which is terrible. I know somebody who traveled all the way from Abuja to Lagos, claiming that he was one of the people looking at the palliatives that the government put in place and managed to travel that way. I also know somebody who has traveled all the way to Kano, dropping some food for the people at the checkpoints as he goes along, because the government is not really taking care of them at the checkpoints. I mean, people have devised all sorts of means, but we need to get this thing proper, and so people can be credited and move with confidence.
Yeah, very, very important. And let's go to an area again, which two of you, Mr. Soji and Boson, are really have shown a lot of interest and raised concerns. The maritime space, the ports, and that the ports are not closed. And it's very important to ensure that the process is seamless. Movement of goods and activities continue to move on there. How is it you're engaging your network, the Maritime Alliance Against Corruption network? How is the operations going there? How are the operators faring at this point?
Yes, I must take my cap off, hat off to the Nigerian Shippers Council, because they have been engaging every single day across this whole pandemic, whether it is fighting for people to be able to get demurrage waived off their cargoes, and various issues they've been taken on throughout this period. I would really like to salute the Shippers Council. But I think this is the time for them also to sound the gong that protocols are important. We have to get people at the ports following procedures and processes. It's not the time for unnecessary delay or unnecessary expenditure, and all create any trumped-up charges or misdemeanors or so on. This is the time to retrain everybody. It's a chance to reset the way operations go and follow it by the book. And I think this will help us spring out of the blocks as soon as things are open again, so we can have a more professional port area that is being managed. We also recognize the work that the Ports Authority has been doing at this time, all through the lockdown as well. And I'd like to congratulate them on sticking through it and pushing for certain reforms at this time.
Wow. Commendations to the MP and the NSC, Nigerian Ports Authority and Nigerian Shippers Council.
Just take it back. In fact, you just brought something very important to the discourse about this pandemic and how we reopen the economy moving forward.
Yes.
For example, in the consumer goods space and industries, you have folks that need raw materials. There's a bakery not too far from where I live and got to buy bread. But I noticed that the regular cellophane for packaging is no longer there. So they just put it in one white piece of carrier bag and they tied it up. And I said, these are sliced breads. What happened? And I realized that they don't have supplies of the regular cellophane for the bread. So this could be hanging at the seaports. Okay, so it's good and it's very good news that the folks down there, the Shapers Council, is trying to say, look, the demurrage can be waived and should be waived. Because if we don't do this, by the time you reopen the ports and you allow the importers to pass on the costs of the demurrage
on the consumer,
on those who the companies, MSMEs and industries have ordered for jute bags, they've ordered for packaging and other forms of, and they pass the cost down to the haulage guys, and the haulage guys pass it to the factory and the businesses, and it gets to you and I. Yeah. We will be looking at a very serious trouble on our hands. So thank you, folks. Thank you, Mr. Apampa, for bringing that point out. That demurrage waiver is being worked on to say, please, can you waive demurrage at this point? This is an international, it's a global issue. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. If you can waive it by this time, we say thank you for all of those. That means that if you have ordered and your raw materials, your inputs or whatever are at the seaports, you are not incurring extra. And this comes in dollars, by the way. And where do you find the dollars right now? It's very scarce. Look at the exchange rate. Yeah. We're talking in the region of 400, 500. If you're going to cough that out to pay the customs, to clear, and to pay demurrage, where will you get the money from? Because your factory, whatever, has been shut down for so long. So the whole chain is under strain. Yeah. So we need more of this benevolence and good thinking on the part of those who are within the maritime, the shipping, the container port, the terminals, of the terminal operators, and the rest of them, the concessionaires within the port operations. We say thank you for everyone. And Mr. Apampa, thank you very much for bringing that out here. It's something we tend to have forgotten. Because if Nestle Cadbury is going to reopen the wrapper for the Maggi, the tin for the Milo, Bonvita, whatever, if they are coming in with heavy demurrage for 4 weeks, the price of these goods in the next 1 to 2 months at the marketplace will be totally out of this world.
And that would not be nice for consumers.
For local producers to think, instead of putting your bread in cellophane, can I design some other packaging, maybe out of paper that is lined in a way that would keep the product safe? This is an opportunity for someone to actually propose something different. I think it's a chance all round for us to press the reset button and see what new things we can come up with.
Yes, press the reset button. So as we...
Yeah, I remember many years ago there was a form of paper, very, very soft paper with which you can wrap bread. That was in the... but again, you can... Yes, it's a form. It's a bit of a very thin paper. Thin paper, not cellophane. It was a bit of like a paper. I'm sure the packaging companies like Smurfit Print, the rest of them had... So I'm not sure they're still in business. They can do those ones as a means of which are recyclable, rather than using the cellophane that is from polypropylene, whatever form of chemicals. Maybe we'll start thinking of that instead of using cellophane for bread. We can have this disposable paper kind of wrapper. Innovation. Yeah, I remember that many. I was so young, but now that you're talking about it, I can still sniff the bread.
Wow, interesting.
Mr. Apampa, I'm sure you know about that. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you know that period.
Yes.
Yes, using paper wrapper for bread, and after that you can just recycle it, kind of.
Wow. Yeah, interesting. So Mr. Apampa and Mr. Boson, I'll start with Mr. Apampa. Your closing thoughts on reopening the economy. Well, we've seen that they will ease the lockdown, but it's left for the governors also to set out the guidelines. What would you be advising for the subnationals who will be critical in this period?
They should care about process. We should care about governance. We should care about transparency and accountability. we should actually just use the opportunity to forgetting the things that we had done before and the way we used to do it. Let's just get it right this time. Because our not getting our processes right cost us our readiness and our preparedness to deal with this pandemic. If you look at how many committees we had to go through to get our act together as a country, it shows you that we were not really ready. So it is time for each of them to look again at the processes and establish the proper way of doing things and move it on from there. You can't go wrong doing the right thing the right way.
You can't go wrong doing the right thing the right way. Mr. Boson?
It's all about processes and procedures that perhaps this gives us the excellent opportunity to put processes and procedures in place and be prepared to follow it. We have a bit of it in some measures, some levels, but then we just like bending the rules and processes and jump the gun or jump the queue at every point in time. We seem now to be united against pandemic. Yeah. Will we remain united against breach of processes, procedure, law and order, and rule of law moving forward? That remains to be seen. So that after this pandemic is over, that will be heartbreaking because we have one single opportunity to rewrite the DNA of how we do businesses, how we run governance, e-governance at all levels here. Because if we don't, how many government officials can work from home? All the files are in the office. Everything is on the desktop in the office. Governance is gradually coming to a halt because you can't. Almost all the government offices, hardly can anyone work from home because everything is locked up in the office. When folks are going home, they pick up their bags and just sling it over their shoulder and off they go. So how do you work from home? How much size of our governance is being run from home right now? It's very, very, very minimal. Yeah. So we need to get e-governance into place. We need to be sure that we train people and make accountability work and transparency. But finally, discipline must come in with sanctions.
Discipline must come in with sanctions.
That's my final word.
Processes must be set and followed. Thank governance and the economy amidst the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria. We really appreciate your insightful contributions.
Thank you.
And Mr. Boson Umufa, it's been nice having you.
Thank you.
Your
I appreciate it.
Contributions.
Thank you. Mr. Apampa, thank you so much.
Reports.
It's good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Boson. Yeah. And that'll be all for the market review today. You can log on to our website, www.proshareng.com, to get further market reports, news stories, and analysis on the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on the economy. Also, ProShare has packaged for you the very interesting Corona Central Watch, where you can get data and analysis on how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting the global and Nigerian economy. Log on to proshareng.com/COVID-19 and you get all those details. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.